Welcome to Plaid for Women TV, your go-to resource for the business of life. Whether the CEO of your home or your own business, women struggle with the same challenges. At Plaid TV, we discuss real-life issues affecting real women and offer solutions to help you achieve your goals, get connected, and be heard. Together, we will change the world. Let's do this. No mean girls allowed.
Hey, welcome everybody to Plaid for Women TV. I'm Siobhan Palmer. Today we're talking about a very important topic, diversity and inclusion in the workplace. We're taping here at the beautiful Trinity River campus of Tarrant County College, one of the leading community colleges in the United States. I'm delighted to introduce my guest today, Ms. Shani Barrax Moore, the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at TCC. Shani, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
As you know, very, very important topic. We'd really like to break it up into 3 segments today. So why don't we start out, Shani, talk about TCC's commitment to diversity and inclusion, how this all kind of evolved for the college.
The commitment to diversity and inclusion from Tarrant County College really started from the top. It's part of our Vision 2015 strategic plan, which is the overall vision for the college. And so what the plan detailed is that they wanted the college to assess our current status of diversity around representation, management practices, and institutional climate, and to develop a resulting strategic plan. So the Office of Institutional Diversity and Inclusion was founded in 2010, and they started with doing focus groups with students and employees, and then in 2012 we did a diversity and inclusion survey that was distributed to students and employees, upon which the strategic plan was based.
So you really wanted to involve all parties in terms of accessing the resources and the data so that you can move things forward, which I think is very important.
I think one of the things that made this effort so successful and that people really bought into it is that we were very collaborative at the very beginning on purpose. We had an advisory council made up of students, employees, administrators across the district that provided input on the survey questions as well as on the strategic plan for diversity and inclusion. So there was very broad engagement as it related to this effort.
That's great. You know, it's interesting, diversity and inclusion, I know depending on who you speak with, they have various aspects or definitions of that. So take us through how you developed this survey. What were the components of this survey specific to D&I?
There were 6 main areas, and again, this was distributed to students and employees because we wanted to, where we could, compare the responses of students and employees to some of the same questions. And so the first thing is that we asked our students and employees, what should the role of diversity and inclusion be within the college? We talked about some of the college's practices, how inclusive our practices are. A huge part of the survey focused on climate and personal experiences. What does it feel like to be you at Tarrant County College based upon your identifiers and your identities? We asked both our students and employees how much access they had to resources. For students, it was things like academic resources and financial resources. For employees, it was things like access to training and other resources that allow them to be successful. And then we also even went into things like cultural competence and humility, which I know we'll talk about a bit later. And finally, one of the great things about this survey is that very often you're not able to really dig deep into demographics.
Absolutely, yeah.
So usually on a survey or applications, they ask you the usual race, gender, et cetera. But here we were able to ask questions related to your religious and faith traditions, to sexual orientation, things like disabilities. If you have a disability, what kind of disability do you have? And we can even slice and dice the data, finding out specifically what various members of our population are experiencing as it relates to their different identities. So it was really, really helpful for us in moving towards intentional inclusion.
Shani, after you got all this data and researched it, how did this evolve into this actual strategic plan that you're implementing at Tarrant County College?
Sure. So the plan is called the Strategic Plan for Diversity and Inclusion from Vision to Action because it's based on our Vision 2015 strategic plan. And there are 3 main goals: institutional infrastructure and practices, which focuses on making this part of our 4 Ps, policies, practices, procedures, and people, so that it really becomes part of our organizational DNA. And then the second goal is related to training and development development, which we've really made great strides within that area, that we've done a lot of different trainings for students and employees to help influence some of these inclusive practices and mindsets. And then finally, the last goal is related to institutional climate and intergroup relations. And I know those sound like really big words,
Right.
but we have diversity and inclusion councils on each of our campuses that are taking the data for their campus and developing opportunities for our employees and students to plug into those and develop their own self-awareness. And
I find that fascinating because you have 5 very unique campuses with different needs, different educational focuses. So you're actually drilling it even further down to what is unique to those 5 campuses. I find that fantastic.
exactly. Some campuses, many of our campuses are focusing on things like offensive language and turning that into inclusive language. Some of our campuses are, some of the students on one of our campuses don't see the benefits of diversity and inclusion as much as or as compared to other students. So it's really an opportunity for every plan. Every campus has a 3-year action plan to plan activities by their campus and for their campus. Now, we had a curriculum piece of it. I mean, obviously, we're an institution of higher education, so it makes sense that we would have a curriculum piece.
Sure.
But what we decided is that before we ask our faculty and staff to integrate this into their practices, they need to have an opportunity to have these conversations themselves. So that's going to be part of our next larger strategic planning cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that a lot of corporations over the last 5 to 10 years have incorporated diversity and inclusion into their corporate environment. But I find this unique. Is Tarrant County College, is this kind of a prototype? Are you setting a bar for other community colleges around the country? I mean, where is TCC sounds like it's kind of at the head of the pack in terms of this commitment.
Sure, I believe so. 4-year colleges have been doing this for a long time. And I think it's largely because 4-year colleges are not open enrollment. They have an admissions practice where you don't know who's going to show up because of the admissions practices. And I think that community colleges have said, because we're open access, that we likely have the compositional diversity, but that doesn't mean that you have the inclusion, which is really more about the climate that you're trying to create. So I'm finding among other institutions of higher education across the country, you find very few community colleges that are being as intentional as we are choosing to be about this topic.
Shani, thank you. A very fascinating conversation. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Siobhan Palmer with Plaid for Women Television. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching Plaid TV. See you next time.